So we have this new segment that I'm going to be debuting here in just a second. And I really like the idea of this because there's a purpose to all this. People on the right tend to be a little bit behind the curve when it comes to culture because we're very thought-oriented. We're free thinkers for the most part. There's a handful of people that go with the crowd. But we tend to be more free thinkers. We tend to have more difference of opinion. And we tend to, because we are not necessarily as much connoisseurs of culture as people on the left are. I mean, that's the reason that they have Hollywood. That's the reason that they have a lot of the national news media and a lot of the TV shows, a lot of the producers in that. A lot of the people in music tend to be very far left, even some country music artists. And that's all fine and well and good. Well, I don't know about good. It's all fine in the sense that they're allowed to believe what they want to believe. But nonetheless, this is why culturally the right tends to kind of lag behind the left, at least in that one area. We're just not as good at getting our message out in a culturally palatable way. And so because of that, I've been kind of racking my brain and trying to think about ways that we can do this. The preferred media of the left is memes and internet videos, things that are really short, very concise. And the reason is because their ideas do not stand up to scrutiny well. Because if you think about liberalism for more than about 15 consecutive seconds, most of the theories tend to fall apart. And because of that, they tend to keep themselves to very short media. That's why you'll see somebody who's really far on the left will have 97 bumper stickers on the back of their car, because they're short little jabs and snippets that don't require a lot of critical thinking. That's why when you compare that to the right, the preferred media of communication with the right is talk radio. Why? Because you've got to sit there and talk about it and actually reason out your ideas and give some rationale for them for 3 hours. That's the reason that while there are some left-leaning talk show hosts, by and large, you don't see that nearly as often. It is not a system of thought that lends itself well to a long format like that. And so because of that, I decided to do this new segment, which we're going to try to do. It's not going to be a daily thing like Daily Dose of Stupid or the Chaplain's Report, but, you know, maybe a couple times a week at least. We plan to do this segment called Breaking the Internet, where we take internet videos or memes or something and break down why they're wrong and why they're incorrect. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and go to our brand new segment, Breaking the Internet.
I didn't touch anything, I swear!
Oh! Ty, what did you do?
It wasn't my fault!
All right, so our Breaking the Internet today actually comes via the Huffington Post, everybody's favorite liberal news outlet. In fact, it's Michelle Obama's favorite. She said that in a speech once. So the Huffington Post, very left-leaning publication, they put out this video that takes a swing at Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, specifically the little Clay-mation Rudolph, the old cartoon that comes on. It's what, like 45 years old now? So, been around for a really long time, beloved children's classic. I've been watching it ever since I was a little boy. My dad has been watching it ever since he was a little boy. And so this is something that it spans generations. People have loved it for a really long time. Every year they come out with new Rudolph stuff. And keep in mind, this is a movie that is over 40 years old, and it still has new merchandise coming out every single year. Now, I get that it's a bit of a novelty because it happens to be Christmas themed, but I can remember me as a millennial that's only 29 buying for my sister as a Christmas present the Bumble from the movie. She had little Bumble house slippers that I bought her. So it spans generations, a classic. People absolutely love this movie. There's even a Rudolph Monopoly. I mean, that tells you how much it's permeated our culture, that you can actually buy the Monopoly game of the Clay-mation Rudolph movie. So anyway, everybody knows it's a big deal. I don't have to explain that to you. But because of this, for whatever reason, people on the left feel obligated to just attack things that people like, that people find, especially if it's wholesome or it teaches a certain set of values. And unfortunately, Rudolph is no different. So we'll go ahead and play that clip from the Huffington Post on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Hey, look at
to the beach.
Hey, fire, Snow!
Rainbow Pod! Thanks now! Stop calling me names!
All right, son, try it on.
I don't wanna. Daddy, I don't like it.
You'll like it and wear it.
Oh, but Daddy, it's not very comfortable.
There are more important things than comfort. Self-respect. Daughter, you should be ashamed of yourself. From now on, gang, we won't let Rudolph join in any reindeer games, right?
No, this is man's work.
Now, there's one thing I want to make very plain. No doe of mine is going to be seen with a red-nosed reindeer.
You'll never fit in. Now, you come to elf practice and learn how to wiggle your ears and chuckle warmly and go hee-hee and ho-ho and important stuff like that. A dentist. Good grief.
I don't even know where to begin on this one. So their chief complaint with the movie is that people are mean to Rudolph because he has a red nose. Yeah, that's the point. The whole plot of the movie kind of revolves around that. And this is a question that I've not been able to get a good answer from people that are upset at the movie. What do you want the movie to be about? How do you make the movie without Rudolph being ostracized? How do you make the movie without him and Hermie being outcast? The point is you can't. That's the conflict. That's the whole point of the movie. That would be like, and we're going to get to this in a second, it would be almost like trying to make Lord of the Rings without orcs, Saruman, or a ring. Okay, well then it's just a bunch of hobbits hanging around eating stuff. Do you really want to watch that for 12 and a half hours? And Rudolph, I guess theoretically they could have made a version of Rudolph where everybody was nice to him, but that's the conflict of the movie. If you do not have conflict, you do not have a story. That's like third grade literature. They teach you that early. That's how basic it is. So if you don't have anybody being mean to Rudolph, if you don't have anybody treating him like an outcast, if you don't have people making fun of him for his nose, then the movie doesn't make any sense. There is no conflict. If everybody was just accepting and tolerant of Rudolph, then that would be the most boring movie on earth. It would just be a bunch of reindeer running around and having fun, and then Rudolph winds up being on Santa's team. So what? See, this is the whole thrust of the movie. The conflict gives Rudolph and the other characters meaning. It changes them over time. That's the difference in a flat character and a round character. Because Rudolph has to develop, and the way that he does that is he does so through adversity. And eventually becomes the strong, confident character that he is because he was picked on as a kid. Because his parents didn't accept his deformity. Because Santa Claus said, well, he'll never be somebody that can work on the sleigh. And see, that's the whole point of the movie, because everybody can relate to Rudolph. Everybody has been ostracized by somebody at some time. You've either been bullied as a kid, or there was some group of people that you wanted to be a part of that you weren't. I can't think of anybody, and I don't know anybody that hasn't been ostracized or marginalized by somebody at some point in their life at some time. Even very popular kids that were well liked, they've had it happen by somebody, either their parents or a relative or something. Because not everybody is accepted by everybody else. The whole point of this movie is to teach tolerance by showing you how wrong all the characters that are being mean to Rudolph for no reason are. Yes, Rudolph's dad is kind of a jerk about it. That creates the conflict. Yes, Santa's kind of a jerk about it. That creates the conflict. Yeah, Clarice's dad, who Clarice is like the only character that actually does accept Rudolph the way that he is, he's a jerk about it and wants to keep the two of them from being friends and eventually more. And that's the whole point of the movie. Everybody can relate to that because everybody's had a father-in-law or a parent that hasn't been accepting of something that they have that for no reason other than it was different. And that's the point of and that's the beauty of the movie, and the reason it's a classic and the reason it's so popular is because sometimes it's that weird thing that people didn't understand about you or were afraid of it just because they didn't really fully comprehend exactly why it was there or why you did it, that turns you into a good person and actually gives you a uniqueness that allows you to help other people in a way that most people can't. That's the whole thrust of the movie. And so by going after Rudolph because of that doesn't make any sense, because it would be like making fun of a baseball player for being good at baseball. You say, well, it would make baseball a lot better if we didn't have any bats or gloves or balls and nobody ever ran the bases. Well, then you've just got 9 guys standing out in a field looking at each other. And if you took out all of the people making fun of Rudolph, that's exactly what you would have in this movie. A bunch of little clay deer standing in a field of snow looking at each other and not doing anything. It's just so incredibly stupid. They missed the entire point of the movie, which is to teach tolerance and to teach acceptance. You would think, if anything, the left would really love that movie. They might love it for the wrong reasons, but you would think, just on the onset, that the left would actually love that movie and praise it, instead of trying to say that there's something wrong with it because of what happened. So it doesn't make any sense. And actually, there's a parallel that can be drawn here with another kind of similar story that's going on. I don't know if you saw it, but last week there was a guy on the left that got a lot of flack in the media because he was saying that there's something wrong with Lord of the Rings. And the reason that he was saying this, and he's writing a study on it or something that wound up getting published. The reason he's saying this is because it teaches racism. And he's saying that it teaches racism because the orcs are just a bad race. Well, yeah, the orcs are a bad race. And he's saying because in Tolkien's world, the orcs are just portrayed as bad for no reason. And because they're just born bad, that they just do Saruman's bidding. He says what we need to do is, Tolkien should have made them round characters, which goes back to what we were just discussing. He should have made them relatable villains, that maybe they were oppressed at some point, and that's the reason they did it. The truth is, even though it's actually opposite ends of the spectrum, for example, one person is upset that the villains are not relatable, and in Rudolph's case, they're upset that the villains are relatable. In other words, the villains, the antagonist is a better way to describe it, not really the villains. The antagonist in Rudolph are Rudolph's dad and the other reindeer, and actually even Santa to a degree. And so because of all this, they actually take the opposite approach, but the core, the reason that they're attacking it, is the same. People on the left want to attack anything that is wholesome or good or portrays traditional or Christian values. And so they have to figure out some kind of way to make it evil or really wicked. Ironically, they do this because they don't believe in evil. They do it because they want this idea of conditional morality. That it's just subjective, and it depends on the situation that you're in. It's situational morality. Because if you're in this situation, maybe it's understandable. In other words, this guy wants the orcs to be somebody that you could relate to where, okay, maybe the orcs and what they're doing is wrong, but really you can kind of understand why they chose that path. And it's because they have this odd belief that evil isn't really evil. that when people make bad decisions that hurt others, it's not because they're really bad, it's just the circumstances of their life. This is why they believe, for example, in a lot of the welfare programs, they believe, well, those people aren't poor because they're lazy, and they're not poor because they're not skilled, and the only reason that they're poor is because they weren't afforded certain opportunities, and there were people that were oppressing them and keeping them down. There may be legitimate cases of that happening, but the point is, there is this overall belief for a lot of people on the left that that's never the case. You're always just a product of your circumstances. You're not a product of your choices or things that you did. Really, we're all just products of the situations that we're put in, and we really don't have any control over that. And this is what he's essentially saying with the orcs, is that the orcs aren't making bad decisions because they're bad people. The orcs are just put in a bad situation, and they're reacting to that bad situation. And if only, I don't know, there had been some socialist elected king of Middle-earth, then it would be fine because they'd be afforded the same opportunities. And this also shows a blatant disregard for Tolkien lore, because if you do know the background of the orc race and how it came to be, they're fallen elves. In other words, they were elves that were a race that was immortal and in a lot of ways even better than mankind, but because they made evil decisions and did terrible things and betrayed their fellow elves, they eventually became a fallen race. And that's the reason they look the way they do, the reason that they're all deformed and weird looking. That is a outward showcase of who they are inside. I mean, this is a race that engages in cannibalism and destruction. They will straight up eat children. That has happened in the Tolkien lore. And so this trying to rationalize their evil is an outcropping of that foundational misconception that he just believes that people aren't actually evil. And that really is, both of these stories are just an outcropping of the left wanting to destroy anything that teaches traditional morals or family values or something that is wholesome that a lot of people like. There are some people, for whatever reason, that if other people like it, they just want to trash it. They just want to destroy it, specifically because other people like it. And it really is a shame. That's a really terrible way to look at the world. I mean, there are things that I think do need to be torn down because they're wrong and because they teach people the wrong thing. But I don't want to tear things down just simply because other people enjoy it. And I've never understood really people that do.